Hey y'all, it's Dr. Sharon D. Johnson, and I am happy to join my brother, Dr. Greg Carr, at Howard University in Jailbreaking the Black University. Those of you who know me may know that I have taught for the past 2 years an original course on race and gender representation in screen adaptations, which obviously examines issues of race and gender in source material that's been adapted for the screen. So for Jailbreak the Black University, I want to tweak that. Actually, not tweak, return it to what the course was originally, and that is looking at Black representations in screen adaptation. You might have read a recent article by a scholar who wrote about a family member, and that book was adapted for Netflix. The author was very unhappy with the result, understandably. So what I want to do in this first video is go over some things about adaptation, but first I want to address this enmity between academia and Hollywood. So I live in both worlds. Obviously, I have a doctorate, and for 27 years, I've been a member of the Writers Guild of America West, which is the labor union, the West Coast labor union of professional screenwriters. So I live in both worlds. I'm a published journalist, a screenwriter, and a scholar. So I can speak to both issues. Writing source material that's based on scholarly or historical issues, and adapting things for screen. First, I want to put on my scholar hat. So I'm wearing my undergraduate tassel here, since this year would be my 35th reunion, but because of Ms. Rona, we ain't having no reunion. So I'm wearing my 1985 tassel as I put on my scholar hat. So some things that I want to say to writers of scholarly, historical, or literary material who are upset about the way things are adapted for the screen. Number one, don't sell your film rights. If the material, especially if you're writing about family members, if the material is that close to you that you want to maintain control about how that is translated to another medium, don't sell your film rights, because I promise you the result will not be to your liking. I would say take a screenwriting class or 2 or 10 and really find out what the work takes to translate a 200, 300 page book to a 2-hour film. A lot of times I hear scholars talk about adaptations and Hollywood with a sense of derision, a sense of superiority. So let's remember, as African people, our first language was in visual images. Matter of fact, the communication in visual images was the divine speech. Because everyone could not have access to that and perhaps didn't understand it, that's when other derivative methods of writing and speech came along so that everybody could have access. So we put this emphasis, this superiority on the literary word, when image is actually the higher level of communication as far as our African heritage goes. So take some screenwriting classes, write the screenplay yourself. If you have a piece of source material, write the screenplay yourself. Or hire, yes, that means pay, hire a professional screenwriter to write it for you. If they are your hiree, then you have the say on what they should change, what they should keep. But as soon as you sell your rights to Hollywood, it's out of your hands. Or negotiate. That's what negotiations are for. And if you cannot negotiate to have enough control and say so over your source material as it is adapted, then don't do it. Just don't do it, right? Okay. And the last thing is, if you hire someone to write the screenplay or write it yourself, then raise money to shoot it yourself. and maybe not shoot the whole 2 hours yourself, but shoot a short portion of it yourself. So that way, if you decide to go to Hollywood entities, you're coming with some power, with some weight, with some credential. But time and time again, I see this bitterness, and I might get hit for this, but I think scholars and historians need to admit that the money's cute. The reason you sell the rights to your book is because you know how much money is to be made. And there's perhaps some bitterness that as a scholar, you can write something and you're getting so much money from the book. And a screenwriter can adapt that and make much more than you made. So just admit, hey, the money's good. I'm going to sell the rights to this, but understand what you're doing, what you're getting into when you do that. So when I was a full-time writer, I was a television writer full-time for 5 years, and hey, I had no issues. I had no problems. I didn't have to worry about rent, food. I was helping other people pay their rent, mortgage, food, whatever. I've also lived the other side of that, where I couldn't get arrested for various reasons, which are subject for another video. But just understand the industry you're in. If you're gonna step into it, step all the way in, right? And I think that will mitigate some of the disappointment. Now let me get to adaptation. So I'm gonna take my scholar thing off, and I'm gonna put on my WGA pin, my writer. Getting into writer mode, okay? So I hope everyone understands that there's no way to capture verbatim 200 to 300 pages of a text onto screen in the parameters of 2 hours. There's no way to do that. Even if you are doing a mini series that maybe gives you a good 10 hours, there's still no way to incorporate everything. You have to understand the two languages, literary and visual, and understand that changes are going to be made. So generally speaking, there are 3 kinds of adaptations. If you read any books on adaptation, there's sort of this traditional translation, literal translations, and radical translations. I'm using the language of scholar Linda Kahir. She uses those 3 terms. And so a traditional translation is you read the book, you sit with it, you get a sense of what are the themes, what is this main character's arc, and you try to embrace and include those key elements, even though you know some specifics might have to change to fit this visual medium. Then there's a literary translation. I would say think of Denzel Washington's adaptation of August Wilson's Fences. That's a very literal translation, and even Denzel said, I didn't want to mess with August, so he didn't change anything. He didn't change August's words. There might have been some logistical adjustments so that you get out of that one set, the house or the backyard, and you're taken to other locations. But basically the words, he did not touch anything. So that's a literal translation. And then there's the radical translation. One of the projects that we're going to talk about over the course of this little series, think of For Colored Girls, Tyler Perry's adaptation of For Colored Girls. I would consider that a radical translation, because what Tyler did was read the book and then break that choreo poem apart and rearrange it to fit a narrative. Now, we're not talking about value judgment here, about the quality of his work. We're simply talking about the specific elements of a radical translation. So you can think of any number of films that fit one of those 3 things. So one of those 3 approaches is going to be taken when something gets adapted. And because we tend to privilege the written word over the visual expression, we always seem to be disappointed in adaptations, for the most part. for the most part. And understand that when you're reading a book, you're creating a film in your head. So you're coming to a film or any filmed adaptation, whether it's on television or film, you're coming to it with an expectation that it's going to look like what's in my head. And if it doesn't, then we sort of think, oh, why didn't it fit my expectation? So understand what we as viewers bring to this process. And it would behoove everyone to just become a little more knowledgeable about the process of adapting from a source to the screen, and so that we don't constantly have these same conversations around the issue. Now, as far as Black subject matter goes, my position is we must remain in possession of our stories, of our history. And so the reason we should sort of learn to do it ourselves or get to know professionals of like mind and like culture is so that, especially if you are the owner of the source material, so that more of the substance that you feel is important will remain, while also creatively elevating it, or I won't say elevating, but or translating it for this new medium. So there's a lot to go around, and yes, there are screenwriters who are, as W.E.B. Du Bois used to say, he would call a lot of white psychologists drive-by sociologists, drive-by sociologists, meaning they would, get in a car, pass through a Black neighborhood, and whatever they saw, they would just start making theories about it, right? So there are screenwriters who are drive-by screenwriters. If they want to write a project about, I don't know, unwed teenage girls, right? Unwed teenage mothers. They'll go to one seminar about unwed teenage mothers and start writing. Like, no. So there are screenwriters who are just about that cash and just want to get it done, want to get that check. But there are plenty of Black screenwriters who care, who have stories to tell, or who want to be of service to people who have other stories to tell. And so it would behoove us to not be at enmity over this all the time. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. That being said, all right, now I'm going into just Sharon D. Johnson mode. All right, it's being stubborn, I'll leave it. So what we're going to do over the next, I think, 5 weeks is, these are some of the projects that my students had to look at, had to examine in my classes. So first we're going to look at my homegirl, my Barnard sister, Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Are Watching God, her novel, 1937, and the adaptation for ABC, 2005. Harpo Productions produced that, starring Halle Berry. And I'm gonna leave links in the comment section where you can start to read some source material. I've written a lot of things on Hurston herself, including my doctoral dissertation was on Hurston and Hughes. So Their Eyes Are Watching God. Then we're gonna check out my other Barnard sister, Ntozake Shange, for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough, 1974-75, and Tyler Perry's adaptation for colored girls, 2010. And we're going to also talk about director Oz Scott's, sorry for the glare, director Oz Scott's direction of the PBS version of that. Then we're going to have a little Spike Lee. We're going to do a little Spike Lee session, and we're going to look at two of Spike Lee's projects. We're going to look at James McBride's novel, Miracle at Santa Ana, and their adaptation, because James McBride wrote the screenplay for his own book, and Spike Lee directed it. So we'll be looking at Miracle at Santa Ana, and, of course, Black Klansman by Ron Stallworth. And then the film, directed by Spike Lee, written by Spike Lee and others, We will also look at Hidden Figures. I don't have the DVD with me right now, but we're going to look at Hidden Figures, a book whose film rights were sold before the book was even finished. And last but not least, we are going to look at the juggernaut of 2018, Black Panther. So this is just one of the more recent comics. And of course the film, directed by Ryan Coogler. And even talk about Reginald Hudlin's animated Black Panther on BET. So that's what we're gonna do in my Black representations in adaptation as we jailbreak the Black University. So again, thank you, Dr. Carr, for inspiring me. I know y'all didn't think y'all had to go to summer school, but yes, summer school will be in. So y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all are on lockdown. Y'all are staying at home, safe at home, whatever the phrase is. And I know here in LA, we're gonna be at home for a while. So anyway, thank you so much. Put some questions, if you have them, if you have any questions about Their Eyes Are Watching God, either the film or the book, put them in the comment section so that when I record that jailbreak class, I'll be able to address some of the questions. And we'll go from there, all right? Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.